Hey guys, so we're gonna take a look at a great replay featuring Classic, a famous Protoss player, and his opponent DRG, also a great Zerg from Korea, and we will take a look at how you can play Mutas in this matchup, and also how you can counter them if you're playing as Protoss. So Mutas is a very good strategy in most cases. The problem, again, is that you don't really know how to execute that well, right? For the majority of players, even in Grandmaster League, it's a pretty difficult thing to do, but if you learn how to play Mutas perfectly, or at least on a very good level, you're gonna get like a really huge win rate. And today we'll be taking a look at this game between Classic and DRG, and we'll see how they're gonna be playing in that play style, right? We'll take a look at how DRG is opening, how he's going to be transitioning into Mutas and Mass Mutas specifically, and how Classic is going to be trying to counter that. Even though Mutas are pretty costly, they're really expensive, that's a really risky strategy to play, they're usually worth that if you manage to get a really good number of Mutas on the map, like 15, 20 and more. This is the kind of unit that scales really well into the late game, because again, due to how they attack, they have a projectile that bounces off different targets, and hence you can have a really good stacking damage when you have a lot of them. And at the same time, the problem with Mutas is that you kinda need to have a perfect scenario for them to pop up on the map, right? Because you just cannot go straight into Mutas. Like some players, they kinda try to do that. They try to rush Mutas from 2 bases sometimes, or from 3 bases. Usually it's not the best way to do that, because again, they are very vulnerable if they are scouted, and this is something that we're going to be trying to avoid. So if you're going to play Mutas as a Zerg player in this matchup, you need to play that normally. You need to play that as if you are not playing Mutas, because if Protoss player kinda guesses that you're doing something cheeky like that, he's probably going to counter you very easily, and this is like the biggest part, the biggest drawback why you don't really play Mutas all the time, because again, if your opponent scouts you, he's probably gonna go for an all-in attack with like 10 Stalkers, maybe a couple of Archons or something like that, and he's probably gonna crush you unless you have a really decent economy, or unless you have a high link count. So in this game, we are still seeing like a very standard opening, and Classic is going for a Stargate. Stargate actually is a very good thing for playing Mutas. And I mean good for Zerg race, not for Protoss. Why? Because in case if Protoss playing Twilight, he's going for Glaive Adepts or something like that, he's probably gonna have the Templar Archives kinda early, or maybe like a Dark Shrine. And Mutas are super terrible against Archons until they get the +1 attack, or until they are in a great number. So with Stargate, usually Archons are gonna be delayed quite significantly, and the only threat is going to be Phoenixes, but they are kinda easy to counter, to out-micro, until your opponent gets the range upgrade, which is also time-consuming. It's not gonna appear immediately, so you'll have a very good time window to do everything you need, to do all the damage you need. So, in the beginning, again, you kinda play normally, and you can see Classic is trying to do some harass. He's like getting 1 drone, maybe like 2 drones here. Yeah, he could have probably got this one as well, but again, it's fine. If you're playing Zerg, you can lose a couple of them, maybe max like 3-4 drones. You don't really need to lose more than that, because if you lose like 5, it's gonna be a big deal. But yeah, usually losing 2 is not so much damage. You can live with that. And then the next one part for playing Mutas is that you need to be super safe with how you place your queens at the beginning, and you need to cut corners. You need to be very cautious with how you spend your money. And you can see that Don Dragoon right now, he's not really building spores, which is kind of risky. You usually need at least 1 spore on the main base, but yeah, you can have like 2 queens and that's gonna be enough. And you can see that with 2 queens you can easily counter the Oracle. Again, in this case, Classic decided to save the Oracle, but some players, they like to actually sacrifice the Oracle and kill as many drones as they can. So I would still suggest that you put at least 1 spore color on the main, and maybe like have 2 to 3 queens on the second base. That's the best case scenario. And you can see that Don Ragu is not really mining gas. That's a pretty important thing as well. Like, you don't really need gas as Zerg until like minute 5, or sometimes until minute 6, and that's a pretty big deal, because like many players in lower leagues, even like in Diamond League and even in Master League, they tend to spend too much money on gas. They tend to spend too many workers on that, and you don't need that. You need a lot of minerals for the Zerg race. That's the most important resource to get, because again, for Protoss race, you can mine more gas than you need, because you always have an easy way to spend that, right? As a Protoss player, you can always make extra upgrades. There are more upgrades for the Protoss race to make, because you can get the shield upgrades as well. And also you have very, very cheap Templars. They don't cost as many minerals, but they cost quite a lot of gas. For Zerg race, there are no units that cost a lot of gas, but they are cheap on minerals. Well, maybe infestors, but they are not really that useful anyway in the current meta until the late game, so you don't need them. And yeah, this is a great play by Classic. He's trying to do as much damage as he can, and he already got 9 drones, which is a decent number actually, but still, for Zerg race, the most important part here is not, again, losing drones. You can try to avoid that, but you're probably going to be losing a bit of them anyway. But the most important part is that you don't spend your money on army. You see, like, Don Regu, he's not really building any units at all. Like, yes, he has like a bunch of links here just for scouting, and he just sees that, okay, my opponent is not doing anything crazy, there are just a couple of adepts, a couple of sentries, so I can just keep on making drones. And that's exactly how you're supposed to play the Zerg race, right? You should try to cut corners all the time, and you should switch between production. So you build drones, you build a really solid economy, you make your country great, and then you start making army. So not in a different way, because again, this is the most cost-efficient way to do that, and that works really well for Don Regu in this game. Actually, you can see that even though he lost quite a bit of workers this game, he lost actually 10, but his economy is now better, and he's not really behind on any other aspects of it. So he has a layer already, he has some upgrades, he's gonna have the +1 melee, and he also is making roaches. So now is the time for Mutas. Finally, after so much time, he's putting down the Spire, and now we're gonna be taking a closer look at how he's gonna be playing. So Classic is going for the standard Archon stuff. He's not doing anything crazy. Sometimes you might face Blink Stalkers, and it's actually fine if you play Roaches and Links. It's kind of good, and you can then transition to Mutas, but you need to make sure that you make the melee upgrades and the +2 melee, because again, for Mutas, you are not gonna have a lot of gas, so you're not gonna be building Roaches or any other units, but you're gonna be making a lot of links as a supplement for your army, right? You're gonna need some, this tanky units and some distractions for Stalkers, for Archons, for photon cannons, just, a cheap meatball that, kinda gets all the damage soaked, and your Mutas are just doing the rest of the job, right? That's the goal. And so far it's working really well for Don Regu. He's taking all the gas, and the best amount of gas for Muta is 5 Gazers actually. I mean 5 bases, right? And you can actually take the Reach Vispin Gazer here, and that's pretty good. And again, the most important part of playing Mutas, you kinda need to hide that. You need to force your opponent into thinking that you're not playing Mutas. And you can see here Don Regu is still making a couple of roaches. That's not like a really great number, but the point here is not to cause damage or like even, cancel the base. The point here is to force Classic to think that he's playing against a normal playstyle with Roach, Ling, Banelings, and not something else. But Classic, he actually scouted with Sentry, I believe, and he saw that something is going on. He senses that and he starts building Phoenixes. Only 2 so far, but again, that's fine. And you can see that he's trying to set up a good defense here. And again, as a Protoss, your goal, if you are caught off guard with Mutas at this mark at minute 7, minute 8, your goal is to set up your defense and make sure you don't lose any probes. And you cannot really move out unless like either you move out right now before Mutas appear on the map, or you can move out when you have a really good army and you have a really good defense at home. So for example, you can leave like 5 or 6 or 7, the better number, the better it is, right? Phoenixes, and then you can move out with the rest of your army. So when you have like 5 Archons, a lot of Zealots, Stalkers and stuff, your opponent's probably not gonna break you, and this is something that you're looking for. As a Zerg player, on the other hand, your goal is to cause as much damage as you can, and you should prioritize the +1 attack on Mutas, because it's going to be affecting your projectiles and how they bounce from target to target. And you can see that Don Regu is actually adding Corruptors, because Corruptors have a great range, they can easily outperform Phoenixes, and this is what you need to do. With your Mutas, you're going to be flying across the map and trying to target as many probes as you can, but you need to make sure you are not trading your Mutas for probes, because again, They're kind of expensive, and your goal is to make the death ball of Mutas. You need to save them, you need to have a great number of them, around like 20 or so. You can of course trade in like this low numbers, as Donrego is doing here. Like he's trading, he's getting some probes here, and he's also getting some stalkers, some phoenixes, and your goal is just to keep on pressure. You should always attack your opponent, you should never let go. That's your goal here, and you should be just making sure that you are never letting Protoss move out from the map. So see, in Classic, he's kinda itchy right now. He's trying to move out, he's thinking about that, but he cannot, obviously. And again, you should force him to stay at home, because if he makes 200 supply, if he makes like a ton of cannons, a ton of shield batteries, the game is over, pretty much. Because you can't really transition from Mutas into something else. Well, unless you got Hive, but you know, probably not gonna happen anyway. So you should just max out on Mutas, and you should have like a separate army. You can add banelings, but that's actually not really important, but Donrego is trying that. But I would say that you should just be attacking at different places. And actually, what I would suggest here, let's take a small pause for 1 second. Most of the time, Protoss players would place a lot of defense on their bases, on the 4th base and on the 3rd base, and you can see clearly here. So again, Classic is splitting his army into 2 points. This is pretty much unbreakable, and this is pretty much unbreakable as well, unless you're gonna sacrifice a lot of units. But for the majority of games, Protoss players would leave this area absolutely defenseless, and you can see even on a very high level that's the case. And now we can take a look at the main base. Main base is also usually not that protected as it should, right? Because again, you can see there's only 1 cannon and there is just nothing here. So my suggestion would be, in this case, you should probably not attack the 3rd and 4th base, because again, they're going to be protected very well. What you should do instead, you should take your Mutas, you should take your Corruptors, and you should fly over this area, or you should fly over this area and try to target the 2nd base or the main base. The main base is actually a lot better, because again, you can target the pylons, you can disable the stargates, you can get very important structures like Templar Archives, or you can get pylons as well. And your opponent will be forced to move units in case he doesn't have enough defense at home. So for example, in this case, again, now Donrego has way more Mutas, he has way more Corruptors, and there are just 6 Phoenixes. So in case he attacks the base here, in case he attacks the structures, probably Classic is going to be transferring some units. Maybe he'll be doing the recall and getting a big army there. And that's the perfect time for your ground army to attack at the same place at the same time. You can go for the 3rd base or for the 4th base, or you might as well just go with your links here. You can just go with like a big bunch of links, destroy the wall with your Mutas, and then just go and do the rampage on the base. So why not? But Donrego is making a big mistake here, in my opinion. Like, he's trying to win this game in like 1 or 2 fights with banelings. He's trying to cause a lot of damage on these mining bases, which is kind of true. This is also like a good option, but again, in my opinion, most of the time there are just easy choices to make, like this base, even though it's not as important right now in this stage of the game. But again, it's very vulnerable, and that's probably where you should attack. So let's take a look at how it goes now. So Donrego is still trying to cause some damage, but he's picking fights, which is not something that you should do. Again, when applying pressure, you should be looking for economy, you should be trying to target the economy, but he's again going on this base, which is also fine. Again, your goal is just to keep on trading, because again, your economy is going to be much bigger, and that's fine. But again, the problem here is that he loses a lot of Mutas, because he gave Classic a lot of time in this game. He didn't really apply as much pressure as he could, and now he's trying to go back. And actually, this is a pretty bad spot, because as long as your Protoss player doesn't have the upgrade on the range with Phoenixes, you're actually pretty safe. But now he has to be very careful. Now Donrego needs to have a good chunk of Corruptors to be protected against anything that's gonna be moving out very soon, and especially against Phoenixes, right? Because that's a pretty big deal right now. So again, at this stage of the game, it's pretty good if you can transition to Hive as well, especially when you have the 200 supply. And that would be a great idea to go for Hive and get the Adrenaline upgrade for the links, right? Because it's a very good upgrade that does a lot of damage, and links just get much better. And this is something that I think Donrego should have done in this game, but he's not doing. Classic, on the other hand, is doing everything that he can, and he's playing a great game. And you can see now Donrego is still trying to find like a big spot on this defense, but he's actually a bit late in this game, as I said previously, because Classic, he managed to get the supply, he managed to get the army that's needed to counter that, but again, now he's doing what I suggested previously. He's baiting the army to fight at one point, and he's also attacking at the same time on the 4th base, and this actually worked out really, really well, and this is something that you should be doing. And you can see that now Classic is trying to counterattack. Most of the time, again, Protoss players would rather go back at home, because it's very, very difficult to win the base trade in this scenario when a Zerg player has a lot of mutas and also a lot of links, and as a Protoss you can't really win this base trade unless you have a ton of static defense, which is not the case for the majority of games, unless you had like a really, really good defense, pretty much as Classic did, but still it's pretty risky. So the Protoss player now should just keep on massing Phoenixes, and he's probably gonna win this game, because again, Don Rigo doesn't have like a really great army, he can only go for the base trade, but again, if you take a look at the numbers, he only has 12 Corruptors, which is a solid number anyway, but with such Phoenixes it's very, very easy to micro, and Protoss player has a better position right now in the game. He has a lot of useless units like Immortals, they don't really do much now against Lynx or against other units, but still it's fine, he can still trade, he can still win this game. And as Don Regu, you need to, again, apply pressure all the time. That's the most important part of this game, and he is kinda passive right now, but still going for this base trade, as I said. And you can see that Classic just turning around, he knows that he's not gonna win the base trade, and this is why this playstyle is very powerful as Zerg, because if many Protoss players, what they do, they keep on pushing, they try to go for the base trade, and then they lose the game, because again, Zerg race, it's gonna be just expanding, it's gonna be remaxing much faster than you can, and probably you're gonna lose a lot of on the Spore Crawlers, on the Queens, on just like random units, and again, Links just do the job faster. And you can see again, Classic had to return, he lost a lot of time, and the precious time, by the way, so this is actually a pretty bad scenario for him. But still, again, he has quite a lot of Phoenixes, and again, Don Rigu is not so active on the map, he's still like trying to stay around his creep. He's a bit passive right now, but he cannot take the direct engagement. That's something that you should never do with your mutas, because again, if you take a direct engagement, you're probably gonna lose because of the storms and all the splash damage that Archons have. So again, Don Rigu is trying to go around the map. He needs to make sure that he's not losing his own economy, and he did lose quite a lot of his own units, which is bad. And now he's gonna target the base, which is actually pretty decent. The problem though, the big problem that he has right now, he doesn't have the adrenaline, he's not making that upgrade. But again, it's still doable for him. You can see why you should never engage in a direct fight. He just lost quite a lot of HP here. But still, it's fine. Again, providing that he survives until he gets the +3 upgrade on melee and the adrenaline, he's probably gonna win this game. But again, it's pretty tough so far, because at this point, Classic has a decent army, he has a very good chunk of Phoenixes. Let's see how many actually. He has 18, this is a great number. So he needs to make sure that he avoids all these direct engagements. The problem again with such number of Phoenixes that you now don't really trade as well even with Corruptors, because you can see you can target Corruptors with Phoenixes, and Don Regu should be very careful with that. He's still trying to attack, and again, I see this empty wall all this time, and I feel really sorry for Don Rigu. He could have done so much damage, and you can see again, Classic is trying to go for the base trade, but he cannot, because you can only move out when you have like a really decent force at home, when you have like some Archons left at home, when you have a lot of defense, but it's not the case here. And you can see that Classic, he cannot really base trade in this game. Yeah, he can send some Immortals, it's gonna be fine, but again, Don Rigu is also playing very passively, which is a mistake here, and he should have tried to go for it. He should have gone for the all-in. He's not doing that, unfortunately, and that's pretty bad, because he's losing this valuable time. He should be sending waves after waves of units into this base, and yeah, and forcing the recall. And after forcing recall, you should just go back. You should go back right now, and you should clear out all that's left here, and Protoss player is gonna be in a very bad position. Because again, splitting army is not the case. But again, in this game, in this situation, Classic has such a great chunk of Phoenixes, and you can see that he's just outperforming Don Rigu, because Don Rigu was very slow with his attacks, and you can see now that he's losing all the Corruptors, and there's just no way to win this game, and Classic still makes that. Because Classic went for the best unit composition in this game. He went for the Phoenixes, which are very good against mutas, and again, Phoenixes at a certain number, they start outperforming even Corruptors, and you can see that 18 Phoenixes is a great number. Many Protoss players, on the contrary, they go for Stalkers, they go for Archons. Archons are kind of good, but you know, you cannot really move out with them unless you have like a great number, like 15 Archons or something, like maybe like 10, and you can leave a couple of them at home to counter this, to counter the Mutas and the run-bys. But the problem again, you really lack mobility, and Phoenixes, they give you that. You can be active on the map, you can clear out the overlords, you can actually go for the pickups and try to target Zerg's economy as well. And for the Zerg player in this case, if your Protoss player managed to get so many Phoenixes, that pretty much means that you messed up somewhere in the game, because that's not an ideal scenario, and we can actually see that moment in time. We can get back a bit, and this was the perfect case for Don Regu, actually. He could have won that game straight here at this moment in time, because he could have just flown somewhere to this base, as I said, or to the natural, and this would have been a great example, and this would have been like a really great game for him, but he was like super patient and super slow. And another thing that could be done, if you have already like 200 supply, the best thing you can do is to go for Hive and get all the essential upgrades for the for your links especially, right? And for Mutas as well, when you have the time to do that. And as a Protoss player, you need to make sure that you keep on making Phoenixes. It's the best tool against Mutas, and if you micro them well, you're probably going to win the game afterwards when you have 10 or more of them. And it's also very important that you don't really need to move out. When you have 4 bases, you are very safe to stay on 4 bases. But if you are caught off guard on 3 bases, then you need to move out some way, somehow. And the best way to do that is either when you see the smallest number of Mutas, because right now, for example, when you see the Spire, this is the best time to move out. For a Zerg player, the most important goal here is to keep his army on your side of the base. On your side of the map, sorry. Because again, if you move out right now immediately, you don't really have a large force, but you can still reinforce with a War Prism, and you can still keep on putting pressure on the Zerg side of the map. But if you are forced to stay at home, or if you are losing economy at home due to a run-by or just this small roach force, they're probably going to lose the game, because the Zerg player will be able to defend, and this is going to be a problem. But again, if you manage to keep your economy safe and still apply pressure, that's going to be a very good scenario. Another thing that many Protoss players do wrong, again, Zerg players are going to be applying a lot of pressure, and you can see like how Classic played this game. Most Protoss players, they try to stay at home all the time, like they try to defend, but you can't really win the game if you just defend the whole time on 4 bases. You either need to take the 5th base, but in majority of scenarios, you're just probably going to lose the game, because you will be running out of minerals and gas on your main base and on your second base, and Zerg is going to be just taking more and more map, and at one point, even though he might be trading wars, he's probably going to be winning just due to the sheer numbers and the amount of minerals and gas he has. So Classic is always trying to be active on the map to apply pressure, but he also immediately comes back when he feels threatened, and that's pretty big case for this playstyle. You need to be playing somewhat like this. If you don't feel like moving out on the map, for example, you don't have enough microcontrol or you don't have enough multitasking, the best way to do that would be just building a War Prism. Yes, Zerg has Mutas and he's gonna counter the War Prism, but the thing is, you can just go for this small War Prism attack and maybe like warp 5 zealots or something. First of all, they're gonna still cause some damage, right? Because, well, even if he tries to target the War Prism, if he tries to come back, again, Zealot's still gonna do some work here. And every War Prism, every small run-by of Zealots, it's buying time for you. And you need to buy time because Zerg economy is bigger, but your force is still more powerful in a direct engagement, and you just need extra time to build the defenses, to get the Phoenixes and get the upgrades. And if you manage to get all of that together, you're probably going to win the game. And this is pretty much what happened with Classic. And you can see that, yeah, he was losing quite a lot. He even lost the 4th base, but at the same time, again, he was trading much better. He was trading like 4 or 5k resources better. And at the same time, he saved his army, he had a lot of important units, and of course, he got the unstoppable Phoenix Force. And Don Regu, on the other hand, he was playing really well. He got the Death Ball of Mutas, but it was very late, right? Because he missed the opportunities that he had, and there were really great timings that could have been used in a different way. So that's why he lost this game, but he also played very well until maybe like the late game, and that's it. Have a nice day, and see you next time.